an indoctrinated ideology, not one focused on critical thinking and actual truth. An indoctrination that only says one point of view is legitimate and any questioning of those points of view are somehow treasonous. We've come to a place in this country where we cannot have a debate, a dialogue, a discussion.
Foreign interference, security clearances. Yeah, it turns out the Liberals don't actually care about any of that stuff unless it helps them win an election, at least. I'm Jasmine Lane. Like this video, subscribe, follow, comment your thoughts down below. And as always, share the video far and wide so we can help wake up even more Canadians to what the mainstream media won't tell you. Mark Carney used Canada Day not at all to unite the country, but to pump out fear, push propaganda, and cozy up to Europe just a little bit more. And do you remember all of the promises the Liberal Party gave to smear the Conservatives? Well, it turns out the Conservatives were right. I know. Who would have thought? Really, some interesting data coming your way today. All that and more coming up on Over Opinionated. I'd like to start today's episode by giving credit where credit is due.
Now they're trying to trample? We're walking! On the sidewalk. They're bringing the horses on the sidewalk. This is the sidewalk. We're on the sidewalk.
So this was in response to what is being said online, at least, as a pro-Palestine rally that took place on Canada Day. They brought the horses in, though I did see somebody carrying a sign that said, "Kill Bill C5." So maybe that is Bill C5, by the way, is the one that kind of grants the government sweeping powers over national interest projects. In its original state, it granted them severe sweeping powers, but the Conservatives made a number of amendments to it, which prohibited the Liberals' ability to completely bypass ethics violations, among so many other things, conflicts of interest laws, all that stuff. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that one is about. I'd love more details if somebody was on the ground and could fill me in, but you definitely did see some kefayas there. And I give credit where credit is due, because I've long been saying that, you know, when it came to the trucker convoy, they sent out the horses so fast to shut that down as quickly as possible. They declared it a national emergency, which was then found to be unconstitutional. But they certainly wanted to make an example out of those people and their dissenting voices, how much Liberals dislike that, almost like a fascist dictator would, huh? Crazy. And at least in this case, over a year too late, almost 2 years too late, actually. Wow, that's crazy to think about. But the horses did arrive at the very least. They weren't trampling anybody in this case, but at least the law was kind of doing the law.
We need to have a moratorium on immigration, but you know what also? We need to start the mass deportation.
Oh, wait, I forgot. They don't actually really care about that because, as reported by the Globe and Mail, thousands of foreigners' criminal convictions forgiven by Ottawa over 11-year span, raising transparency concerns. Why is that? Well, because they did not disclose the type of offenses these individuals have committed. Remember all of those people, particularly Charlie Angus, who Trump is a convicted criminal. He's a convicted felon, and we're going to let him into the country. How dare we? Actually, let's just listen to that here before we break this down a little bit more, because it's kind of funny.
And this morning, I offer my deep concern, solidarity, and prayers with the people of California. Streets unarmed, defending the rule of law against illegal kidnapping and deportation, and they're being faced down by the military might of the United States Marines. We're not talking about creeping fascism here. This is full-on police state tyranny from the gangster president Donald Trump. And this is the man who will soon be crossing our border to attend the G7 meetings in Canada. I have received hundreds of messages of concern and outrage from Canadians that a convicted felon, sexual predator, and a man who has threatened our nation's sovereignty is being allowed into our country.
Oh man, that fear campaign is very strong. Even CTV News jumping on the bandwagon. Approximately 55 Canadians have been detained by ICE, minister says. And the thing I think a lot of people are failing to recognize here, there was that story that came out, Canadian citizen, he passed away during custody in ICE, but little does the media emphasize, why was he in ICE? Well, it certainly wasn't because he was just randomly plucked off the street. No, No, it's because he had offenses. Yeah, he did. Mark Nixon actually wrote, Anita Anand outraged that 55 Canadians detained by ICE. Meanwhile, in Canada, 4.9 million visas expired between September 2024 and December 2025. These include over 760,000 students, 1 million foreign workers, and millions of tourist and visitor visas. Canada does not have robust controls or exit controls. The system still assumes people will leave after 30 days post-visa expiration. Many stay without legal status, work under the table, or file asylum claims to delay departure. 130,000 temporary residents filed asylum claims in 2024 alone, which was a 5 times increase from 2019. And the CBSA issued just 3,700 removal orders in 2024, which was up from their numbers in 2020, but still a rounding error. Experts believe hundreds of thousands of overstays exist, possibly over 500,000 to 1 million undocumented people. So while Anita Anand was furious over 55 Canadians detained abroad, Canada has no real plan to remove overstayers at home and is banking on voluntary compliance. The thing about this that's pretty interesting is, number one, it goes to show how little vetting we do in Canada. Oh, we're going to let convicted criminals into our country. Well, yeah, actually, they just forgave over 11,000 of them. So I don't understand why you're making a big point about it, because the government you support, Mr. Angus, who is an NDP, very much it doesn't care about that at all, actually. They say that in 2023, there were 1,500 people who were considered to have been rehabilitated, and 1,300 people had their criminal convictions forgiven by the IRCC. What exactly does rehabilitated mean when it comes to that? Like, foreigners can apply to have their crimes forgiven. They must show that they are unlikely to take part in future criminal acts, according to the IRCC. The department considers the number of offenses and the circumstances and seriousness of each one, the IRCC said, as well as the applicant's behavior since the crime was committed. You don't even know who the applicants are. So what do you mean their behavior? They could be doing all sorts of stuff that you have no idea about, because it's not like you keep an eye on these people. Like, what? It also says the IRCC said it looks at the support they receive in the community as well as the applicant's current circumstances. But when you are bringing in so many people into the country, the support they have from the community, you mean their friends? What?
An indoctrinated ideology, not one focused on critical thinking and actual truth. An indoctrination that only says one point of view is legitimate and any questioning of those points of view are somehow treasonous. We've come to a place in this country where we cannot have a debate, a dialogue, a discussion. The very things, the very tools that animate our democracy and builds trust in institutions. And it's manifested in horrible ways. We have seen the national security decisions being made by the Trudeau government on the trucker convoy based on a report from the CBC, not national security considerations. We have seen that questions of terrorism and colonial history are borrowed from the pages of the New York Times rather than actual historical record. And it informs how we think about massive international conflicts today, whether it is the one that Israel is fighting in self-defense from Hamas terrorism, in the worst terrorist attack in this century, the worst attack upon the Jews since the Holocaust. We have seen an unfortunate victimization and re-victimization of not just the state of Israel and the people who dwell there to defend their borders and their peace, but on Jewish life in Canada. Over the last decade, hate crimes are up 250%, and yet 75% of all hate crimes in Canada are concentrated on less than 1% of our population. There is a moral sickness in our country that needs to be confronted. The journey ahead will not be easy. It will be difficult. It will require backbone and courage, and it will require us not to indulge the worst excesses of our base instincts. It is easy when under threat and under intimidation to grow more tribal, to turn to those from our own common points of reference. But let me be very clear. We should speak truth. We should see clearly. We should stand with strength, not on sectarian agendas, but with common values. Common values to uphold the freedoms of our land, freedom to protect the minority from the mob, freedom to celebrate the most sacred minority, that of the rights and conscience of the individual person.
Come on, guys. That's the last thing Mark Carney and the Liberal government want you to be focusing on is the real issues. No, they'd far rather have you focus on this. I was pretty disgusted with the fact that Mark Carney took Canada Day as an opportunity to push propaganda. We discussed that a little bit in yesterday's episode if you want to give it a watch, but this also came out from his Canada Day speech of how united and awesome Canada is. Wow.
Situation where the world is being convulsed. We find ourselves in a situation where our economy is being attacked by a trade war that we didn't start. We find ourselves in a situation where our values are being tested by attacks on democracy and freedoms, attacks that we must resist. And once again, as the world becomes more divided and dangerous, Canadians are uniting.
That has just been passed by a wide majority of elected members of Parliament.
What we have now is a new national building permit that allows us, indeed, it compels us to come together and to build, baby, build.
Honestly, what an expert way to manipulate the public into accepting socialism and the federal government being in control and operating these areas that they shouldn't be in control of or operate under the guise of we're going to build, baby, build. What a Trump-like thing to say. There goes all of those American politics talking points, I bet. But unfortunately, this is the reality, is that unless the government gets involved, because they will not repeal all of the very harmful laws in place that have caused us to be in this situation, and they're not going to repeal those, by the way, that's quite clear. Here's what is actually happening to the private sector under the Liberals' rule, under their socialist playbook.
It's the latest warning from the home building industry about an impending cliff for construction.
We're seeing sales have stopped.
The industry says even as interest rates, the cost of materials, and municipal taxes have decreased, buyers still aren't biting. And no sales means no shovels in the ground. Despite the Ford government's new law aimed at helping home builders free up cash and fast-track projects, the industry is still calling for more help, asking for provincial and federal tax breaks to lower construction costs.
Remember during the election campaign how frequently Mark Carney said, Pierre Poilievre, poof, he wants to cut taxes? That's no plan. Of course it's not a plan, silly goose. It's not a plan if you actually want the country to survive and prosper. It's not a good plan for you if you want the federal government to overtake every private sector. Of course it's not. You know what is a good plan, though? Pretending like we're actually going to do something even though we're not, and meeting with automotive sector CEOs as U.S. trade talks continue.
Just here to talk about the importance of the auto sector and ensuring its continuing success.
Is the EV rebate to debt? Is the EV mandate debt?
We'll be discussing EV mandates, of course, as well as a range of other policies to make sure the sector succeeds.
Do you think that's sustainable, though?
Well, the EV mandate itself is not sustainable. The targets that have been established cannot be met, and that will be part of the discussion.
What will you be asking the Prime Minister for?
I'll talk to you when I get out.
My goodness, I sure hope those talks go well and aren't just a total waste of everybody's time and money. You know, they should, right? Because we do have an economic genius who's super smart, super good at negotiating behind us. So I'm sure that he's going to do whatever's in the best interest of the nation, right?
We saw some challenges this week, even a suggestion that Canada has caved. Are you going to be able to get a deal done in time, Prime Minister?
We'll see. We're doing what's necessary in order to get the best deal for Canadians, and we get the best deal for Canadians, we'll agree to it. If we can't, we won't. I mean, it's that simple. We are making progress as a whole, and look, what we did this week is something that I think we were going to do anyways in the end for the deal. But the other elements are coming together, need to fully come together. We'll work hard. Maybe not this afternoon, to be honest. We're not going to work. I'll be honest, can I take the afternoon off after my remarks.
I don't get to decide that.
Not a great, well, the Canadians get to decide. I'm working for all Canadians.
Wow, that was uncomfortable to listen to. Yeah, I mean, having said that, every other party elected by Canadians, which would actually be the majority, right? Yeah, of people who they decided to speak for them in the House, all said that they wanted you to work throughout the summer and you didn't want to do that. So that's kind of weird. Also, I highly doubt that they were planning to remove the DST anyway, because if they were, they wouldn't have done it in the 11th hour. That's not really how that works. They wouldn't have gotten to the point where Trump made the post that he did, which caused you to panic and need to save face and then remove it like at midnight, almost Ottawa time, before it was supposed to be in effect. And if you were planning to remove things, you know, for the betterment of Canada and our prosperity, perhaps the $10 a day childcare program, of which the Liberals ran on and smeared the Conservatives over, would also be removed. But yeah, they're probably not going to do that either. This is a pretty shocking report from the Fraser Institute titled Massive Government Childcare Plan Wreaking Havoc Across Ontario. Some of the key points in this article are that Ottawa waitlists are up 300% since 2019 for kids aged 0 to 5. Only 1% of child care centers offer evening and weekend care, even though 42% of parents need it. In fact, there are certain regions, Halton and Peel, that can't even add new families because they've hit their cap, even though demand is skyrocketing. Also in Kawartha, Lakes, and Haliburton, the wait time is 4 years. It never used to be like that, though, when it was private, right? Before they drove the private sector out and it became controlled by the government. So as I'm sure we can imagine, as much as the Liberals are like, oh, wow, we love socialism. Yeah, we take care of our people. We're going to tax you to death. We're going to cancel any opportunity to start a new business because we're going to own it. Yeah, central planning fails again. Weird how that always seems to happen, and weird how countries that don't have regulations like Canada does actually thrive. And the sad part is that the private sector could fix this, but it's being blocked because for-profit centers have capacity, but they can't grow because the government has decided that ideology matters more than actually helping families. And, you know, at the end of the day, the promise is a lie if you can't access it, right? So $10 a day sounds great for families that already had their children in a childcare space, until, of course, the families that didn't, the new expecting families, realize that their children won't be able to get a daycare spot until kindergarten. So access is definitely more of the issue than the price is. And we see that as well, even in Canada's free healthcare model, right? So at the end of the day, as with most promises from the Liberal government, which don't encourage you to thrive or live your life at all, what they do is encourage you to rely on them and become dependent on them as they quietly go and remove your freedom of choice, of access, of time even. You know, what do you call a $30 billion childcare plan that parents can't use? A Liberal campaign ad. That's what you call it. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, comment your thoughts down below. Give us a follow on other social media platforms as well, and share this video if there's anything useful you found in it. And I will talk to you tomorrow.